Hi, everyone. Welcome to Autism Myth Courtroom. This is a new short form series on the Adult Autism, a Spectrum of Uniqueness podcast. In each episode, we'll put one common autism myth on trial. We'll examine where the myth came from, why people continue to believe it, what the evidence actually says, and how autistic individuals and their allies can respond. Now, whether you're autistic, a family member, a professional, or just interested in learning more about autism, these episodes will help you better understand autism, challenge misconceptions, and become a stronger advocate for yourself and others. Okay, court is now in session. Today's case, autistic people lack empathy. This is probably one of the most common and most damaging myths about autism. Many autistic adults have heard some version of this throughout their lives, and even if it wasn't said directly, maybe you've heard things like, "You seem cold," or "You don't seem to care. Why aren't you reacting?" Or maybe someone assumed that because you didn't respond in a certain way, you weren't affected by what was happening. And if you're autistic and you're listening right now, you may be thinking, actually, I care too much. Now, let's begin with why this myth exists. Now, historically, autism was often described in terms of social deficits. And researchers and clinicians noticed that autistic people might not maintain eye contact. They might miss certain social cues or respond differently during conversations. Unfortunately, many people made a leap from this person communicates differently to this person doesn't care about other people. And those aren't the same thing, obviously, not even close. Here's where things get interesting. Many autistic adults report the exact opposite experience. Instead of not caring enough, they describe caring so much that it becomes overwhelming. For example, imagine a coworker tells you about a difficult situation involving a family member. Now, a non-autistic person might respond immediately with the expected words. "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That must be hard." Meanwhile, the autistic person may feel a huge emotional reaction internally, but become stuck trying to figure out exactly what to say. They care, they're just trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. From the outside, though, the silence can be easily misinterpreted. Or perhaps you've watched a movie and found yourself, unexpectedly emotional about, one of the characters. And maybe you've seen an animal rescue story online and felt upset about it for hours afterward. Possibly you care about, someone you care about is struggling and you can't stop thinking about it days later. Many autistic adults describe carrying other people's pain around with them long after an interaction has ended. Now, that doesn't sound like a lack of empathy to me. If anything, it sounds like empathy that can sometimes be difficult to turn off. Now, another experience many autistic adults report is feeling unsure about what other people need in emotional situations. Imagine someone tells you they've had a terrible day, and you may immediately go into problem-solving mode. That's something that I do all the time. And you start thinking, how can I help? What solutions are available? What can be done to make this situation better? And meanwhile, the other person may just want emotional validation. The autistic person, they're trying to help, but the other person may perceive them as uncaring. The intention and the perception don't always match. Now, there's also something that researchers call the double empathy problem. You may have heard of this. And the basic idea is that communication difficulties don't occur only because autistic people misunderstand non-autistic people. Non-autistic people often misunderstand autistic people too. So in other words, that communication gap, it goes both ways. Think about how often autistic people are expected to learn the communication style of the majority culture around them. Yet, it's like, non-autistic people they're not expected to learn autistic communication styles. And so when misunderstandings occur, it's the autistic person that's blamed, automatically for that. Let's talk about another situation that maybe you'll recognize this. Have you ever been told, you don't seem emotional? Meanwhile, inside your head, you're experiencing a tornado. You might be overwhelmed, sad, anxious, or maybe really moved by something. But your face doesn't necessarily show all that information. Many autistic adults experience emotions intensely, but express them differently from what others expect. People often mistake differences in emotional expression for an absence of emotion. And those are two very different things. So, what does the evidence suggest? Well, the evidence doesn't support the idea that autistic people lack empathy. Instead, it suggests that autistic people may experience and communicate empathy differently. Sometimes the challenge isn't caring. Sometimes it's recognizing cues or knowing what response is expected, or maybe managing emotional overload. And other times it's being misunderstood. So what's the verdict? Not guilty. The myth that autistic people lack empathy is not supported by the experiences of many autistic individuals or by what we're coming to understand about autistic communication and emotional experience. Okay, now, before we adjourn today's session, here's one thing I'd like you to remember. If an autistic person doesn't respond in the way you expect, don't automatically assume they don't care. Ask yourself a different question. What if they care deeply but show it differently? That one question can completely change how we understand autism. Okay, court is adjourned. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention that I currently have some additional evaluation appointments available in my private practice. And as a thank you to listeners of the podcast, I'm offering a special evaluation rate through July 15th, 2026. And if you've been considering a psychological evaluation to formally confirm an autism diagnosis and you'd like more information about the process, just shoot me an email at chris@chrisquarto.com and mention the podcast. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. That email address again is chris@chrisquarto.com. I'll see you next time for another session of Autism Myth Courtroom. And don't forget, your uniqueness is awesome.